My name is Maya Hayes, and when all of this started, I was 23 years old and exhausting myself for a future my parents claimed to be proud of. By day, I worked 12-hour shifts as a CNA on the med-surg floor of our local hospital. Bedpans, foul smells, too many call lights going off at once. I came home with my back screaming and my hair smelling like disinfectant and hospital food. On weekends, I traded scrubs for a red polo and name tag at the hardware store. 8 hours of cutting keys, mixing paint, and helping contractors find the exact plumbing connector they swore we carried last time. Every paycheck had a mission. $70 per week for food. Rice, beans, bulk chicken on sale, frozen vegetables when I felt fancy. No restaurants, no coffee runs, no treat yourself anything. Rent, gas, and the absolute cheapest phone plan known to mankind. Every other dollar went into the same savings account. Bright blue debit card with my name on it and a balance I checked every few days like it was a plant I was trying to keep alive. By August, that balance was just under $4,000. $4,000 isn't enough to pay for a semester of nursing school, but it was proof. Proof that I could budget, proof that I could make loan payments, proof that I wasn't just dreaming about an RN license. I was crawling toward it with bloody knees. My parents knew all of this. They'd seen the schedules on the fridge, the color-coded planner, the sticky notes on my bedroom wall counting down days to graduation. They'd promised to co-sign my student loans so I could register for the upcoming semester. My boyfriend Caleb had more faith in that promise than I did. "You're overthinking it," he told me one night as we shared instant ramen in his tiny apartment. "Your dad gave his word." "Yeah," I said, staring at the steam rising from the bowl. "He's also given Ashley's weddings plenty of words, too." Caleb grimaced. "Ashley is my older sister, 31, beautiful in that effortless, Instagram-ready way. The kind of woman who never learned to read a price tag because somebody else always picked up the bill. When I was 14, my mom told me, 'You've always been jealous of Ashley for having the personality that deserves beautiful things.' At the time, I thought she was just mad because I'd refused to let Ashley borrow my dress without asking. Years later, Caleb told me that my mom's line sounded eerily like something his ex-girlfriend Jenna used to say. 'Some people just deserve more, Maya. You're being negative.' Back then, Jenna had said it about herself. Funny how the same sentence can follow you around wearing different faces. Ashley's first wedding happened when she was 22. High school sweetheart, big church, 200 guests, $20,000 bill that my parents called a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Their once didn't last. 9 months later, Ashley got caught cheating with Kyle's best friend. My parents blamed Kyle for not being emotionally supportive enough. The second wedding came a few years later. Corporate finance guy named Brett, whirlwind Vegas engagement, another expensive party. That marriage limped to 14 months before cops were called for screaming and broken things. Ashley came home sobbing about how love was cursed for her. During that 6-month healing period, Ashley lived in her childhood bedroom for free, online shopping with credit cards my parents paid. I, meanwhile, worked full-time as a CNA while doing prerequisite nursing courses and paying them $800 a month in rent for my room down the hall. Whenever I asked why I had to pay rent while Ashley didn't, my dad would get that look, the one that meant, "You're being difficult. Your sister is going through something. Be more understanding." I'd learned over years that be more understanding was code for, "Your feelings don't matter here." Still, this time was supposed to be different. 2 weeks before the semester started, I came home from a double shift, clutching my loan paperwork so tightly the pages were crumpling at the edges. My hands were shaking, partly from exhaustion, partly from the idea that this stack of papers was the bridge between all my sacrifice and an actual nursing license. Dad was at the kitchen table with his evening newspaper, the way he always was around 7. Mom stood at the counter, folding dish towels like she was in a commercial for domestic calm. The TV hummed faintly from the living room. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Got the loan documents. School needs them back in a couple of days." Dad didn't look up. "Can you sign tonight?" I pressed. "The semester starts in 14 days. I can't register until this is done." Silence stretched for a little too long. Finally, he lowered the paper, and I saw it, that expression, jaw set, eyes flat, the one that meant the judge had already decided the case and we'd all been wasting time talking. Your sister needs us more right now, he said. I laughed because I thought he was joking. You're funny, I said. Seriously, Dad, I just need your signature. I'm serious, Maya. My heart dropped. Mom smoothed a towel that was already perfectly straight. Ashley's been planning this for months. The venue needs a $35,000 deposit by Friday, or they lose everything. I stared at her. 35 for a deposit? It's a very prestigious place, she said softly, like that explained anything. I've been planning this degree for 4 years, I said. My voice was too calm, too even. If I don't register now, I lose my clinical placement. I might not get back in at all. Dad sighed. Maya, be reasonable. Ashley's already been through 2 divorces. She deserves happiness. You're young. You can go back to school later. I was 23. Ashley was 31. This was her 3rd attempt at happily ever after, with a guy I'd met once at a barbecue, a walking gym selfie named Trevor, who spent the entire afternoon checking his phone and low-key eyeing other women. When I'd tried to tell Ashley, he seemed sketchy. She'd tossed her hair and said, You're always negative, Maya. Maybe you're just jealous I get beautiful things. Same script, different face. Jenna would have been proud. I've been working doubles at the hospital and weekends at the store for 8 months, I said, clinging to logic like it could save me. I'm not asking you to pay anything back. I just need a cosigner. I've got the budget down to the dollar. We already promised Ashley, Mom murmured. She's counting on us. The caterer alone needs $12,000 up front. And then came Dad's speech. Family priorities. Understanding. Sacrifice. How Ashley had suffered in her past marriages and deserved a real chance at love. How I was smart and driven and would land on my feet no matter what. How sometimes we all have to give things up for the people we love. I realized, standing in that kitchen, that when my parents said family, they meant Ashley. The rest of us were supporting characters. Something inside me snapped, not like a plate shattering, loud and visible, more like a hairline fracture quietly giving way after years of pressure. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't beg. I just heard myself say, You're right, Dad, family first. He nodded, relieved, already folding the conversation closed like his newspaper. I went upstairs and started packing. Here's a fun little detail my parents either forgot or pretended not to understand. For 6 months, I'd been paying them $800 a month to live in that house. $800 to sleep in my childhood bedroom, follow their rules, and be told my education could wait because Ashley needed a nicer venue. I'd told myself it was contributing like an adult. Standing in my doorway, shoving my life into duffel bags, I realized I'd just been subsidizing their lifestyle while they bankrolled my sister's 3rd wedding. It took 2 hours. It turns out you can fit 23 years into the back of a battered Honda Civic if you strip away everything that isn't yours. Clothes, laptop, textbooks, a shoebox of photos and old report cards, a couple of cheap jewelry pieces Caleb had given me, a bracelet he bought when we'd still been just friends, a tiny silver ring from the night we admitted it was more than that. I found my high school honor roll certificates, the letter from my guidance counselor praising my work ethic, all the paper evidence that I'd always been the responsible one. I left those in the shoebox on my desk. If they hadn't been enough to tip the scales against a wedding deposit, they weren't worth taking. By 11 p.m., my room looked like a slightly dusty guest bedroom. The posters on the wall belonged more to the house than to me. The desk was bare except for that box of achievements nobody valued when it counted. I walked downstairs, set my house key in the center of the kitchen table, and stared at it for a moment. No note, no dramatic speech. They didn't need an explanation. They knew exactly what they were choosing. On the drive to Caleb's apartment, my phone buzzed twice. Mom lit up, then Dad. I watched the screen until it went dark again. If I answered now, I'd let them talk me into staying, into being understanding, into shrinking my life for Ashley's 3rd walk down the aisle. I kept driving. Caleb opened his apartment door in worn sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair flattened on one side from the couch. He took one look at the car stuffed with my things, then at my face, and didn't ask a single stupid question like, Are you sure? How long do you need? He asked quietly, stepping aside to let me in. I gripped the handle of my box a little tighter. However long it takes to figure out what I'm doing next, I said. What I didn't know, standing in his doorway with my entire life in my arms, was that the answer to that question would involve a uniform, a gas chamber, and a brand new family that would bleed for me in ways my own never had. But that's getting ahead of myself. Caleb's apartment wasn't big enough for 2 people in a crisis, but it tried. The 2nd bedroom still smelled like his old roommate's cologne and cheap laundry detergent. Beige walls, A sagging mattress, a mismatched dresser. It looked like a temporary life someone had forgotten to finish. Sorry, it's not nicer, Caleb said, dropping my box on the floor. We always said we'd actually decorate once I wasn't broke. It's perfect, I said. It wasn't, of course. Nothing about this was perfect, but the mattress held my weight when I sat down, and there was a door that closed and locked, and no one here was telling me to be more understanding about my own dreams being sacrificed. Caleb leaned against the doorframe, studying me. We'd been friends since high school. We'd survived bad cafeteria food, SAT prep, my first car accident, his first heartbreak. Somewhere between cram sessions and late-night drives, we'd slid into something more than friendship without ever having a neat anniversary date to circle. I'm not going back, I said, staring at my hands. I know, he replied. I would have driven the car myself if you'd hesitated. My phone on the mattress lit up again. Mom, I muttered. A minute later, Dad. We watched it buzz between us, vibrating against the thin sheet like a trapped insect. Do you want me to take it? Caleb asked quietly. No. What do you want to do? I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I want to not cry, I said. That's the only thing I want right now. We both knew that was a lie. What I really wanted was for my dad to call and say, we were wrong. Bring the papers back. We'll sign. I wanted my mom to say, we finally see you. Instead, the calls kept coming. 17 from Dad, 23 from Mom, 9 from Ashley. By Saturday morning, I'd blocked all 3. It felt ugly and childish, like slamming a door in someone's face. But every time their names appeared on my screen, I could hear Dad's voice again. You're young. You can go back to school later. Like my future was a DVD he could pause and resume whenever Ashley's latest crisis finished buffering. At the hardware store, I spent 8 hours that Saturday cutting keys, mixing paint, and pretending my life plan hadn't just been set on fire. On Sunday, the knock came at 7 a.m. I'd been awake for 2 hours already, sitting on Caleb's tiny balcony with bad coffee and worse thoughts. I'd checked the university website 4 separate times, praying I'd misread the fine print. I hadn't. If I didn't register this semester, my clinical placement would go to the next person on the wait list. Deferral meant reapplying to the program entirely. 30 available spots, hundreds of applicants. I'd barely scraped in the first time. Caleb was still asleep, so I opened the door, wearing his oversized sweatshirt and a pair of leggings that had seen better days. Mom stood on the landing, clutching her purse like a shield. The sight of her there, on this doorstep, in this life she'd never bothered to imagine for me, hit harder than I expected. She looked smaller somehow, frailer, but the expression on her face was the same one she'd worn every time Ashley cried over a breakup, wounded, aggrieved, already preparing to shift blame. Maya, she breathed. Sweetheart. I blocked the doorway with my body. How did you find me? Your father called Caleb's mother. Of course he had. Can we please talk inside? No, I said. Whatever you need to say it here. Her mouth pinched, the way it always did when I wasn't cooperating with the script in her head. You're being incredibly selfish, she said. Your sister is devastated. She thinks you don't support her happiness. I laughed. It came out sharp. Ashley is 31, I said. If she can't keep a marriage together, maybe the problem isn't her bad luck. That's a cruel thing to say. Is it? Kyle lasted 9 months. Brett made it to 14. Now she's marrying Trevor, who I've met once, and who couldn't tell me a single thing about her other than she's hot. People deserve second chances, Mom insisted. Third chances, fourth chances, however many it takes to find real love. And I don't deserve a first chance at finishing my degree? Of course you do, she replied quickly. Just not right now. Your sister needs us. There it was again, right now, as if time owed me some sort of refund later. The coffee in my hand had gone cold. I stepped back onto the balcony, tipped the mug, and watched the dark liquid fall 2 stories to the parking lot below. Tell Dad thanks for the lesson in family priorities, I said. I'll remember it when you're old, and I'm deciding which nursing home has the best reviews. Her eyes filled with tears. That's not fair. Neither is choosing a party over my future, I said. I closed the door. She knocked for another 5 minutes. I didn't open it again. Caleb padded out of the hallway, hair mussed, rubbing sleep from his face. Your mom? Yeah. He sank down beside me. You okay? No, I said, but I think I'm finally done pretending I am. I'd always believed the universe rewarded hard work with options, that if you did everything right, good grades, no trouble, responsible choices, you'd have doors open when you needed them. That afternoon, I learned that sometimes all the doors are locked, and the only way forward is through a wall you never wanted to punch. After Caleb left for his shift, I called the university financial aid office. I kept my voice clinical, stripping out the messy parts of the story. No mention of my sister's third wedding. No mention of $35,000 venue deposits. Just, my parents had changed their minds about co-signing, and I needed to know if there was any way to keep my spot. The woman on the phone sounded genuinely sorry. Without a co-signer, private loans would come with interest rates that would eat half my income for decades. Scholarships for my year had been distributed months ago. Emergency funds were limited and based on criteria I didn't meet. The only real option, she said finally, is to wait until next year and reapply. That word, wait, landed like a stone in my stomach. I might not get back in, I said. There is one other path some of our students take, she added, almost as an afterthought. The military has scholarship and tuition programs for nursing. I've had a few students go that route. It's a service commitment, of course, but the benefits are solid if it fits you. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at my phone like it had just spoken in tongues. The military. I'd grown up seeing commercials for it between reality shows. Gritty montages of people running through mud, helicopters slicing through clouds, a voiceover promising purpose, brotherhood, and college money. I'd never once counted myself among the people on the screen. Me, who cried at dog food commercials. Me, who got dizzy if I stood up too fast. Me, who didn't like conflict unless it was on a TV drama and I could hit pause. But the more I tried to dismiss the idea, the more stubbornly it stayed. Military programs pay your tuition. They give you a stipend. They put a roof over your head and a uniform on your back. You give them your time, your work, your loyalty. Your life, if it comes to that. I opened my laptop and typed Army Nursing Scholarship into the search bar. 4 hours disappeared. By midnight, my browser was a graveyard of open tabs. Army Nurse Corps, Navy Nurse Candidate Program, eligibility requirements, physical standards, service commitments. Stories from people who'd done it and come out the other side, older and harder and strangely proud. The numbers were terrifying and perfect at the same time. Tuition, covered. Fees, covered. Monthly stipend, enough that I would never again have to argue with myself about buying fresh fruit. In exchange, 4 years of active duty after graduation, basic training, officer candidate school, deployments I couldn't predict to places I couldn't pronounce. At some point, I'd started filling out preliminary applications without fully admitting that's what I was doing. Name, date of birth, GPA, health history. Click. Next page. Click. Around 2 a.m, I fell asleep at the kitchen table with my cheek pressed against the open laptop. When I woke, Caleb was standing in the doorway, watching me. "Maya," he said softly, "are you trying to enlist in your sleep?" I sat up, neck protesting. "Not enlist," I croaked. "Scholarship. Officer. Nurse. It's different." He pulled out the chair across from me and glanced at the screen. Army Nurse Corps, he read. Service commitment, 4 years active duty, basic training, OCS. He trailed off and met my eyes. "You're serious." "I'm serious about finishing school," I said. "This is the only way I see that doesn't involve my parents' signatures or selling my soul to some predatory lender." "That's not what I asked." I exhaled. "I don't want to be at their mercy anymore," I said. "Not ever again. If I go this route, my debt is to an institution, not to people who can dangle it over my head every time Ashley cries." He scrubbed a hand over his face, torn between fear and respect. "My dad is going to lose his mind," I added, a bitter little laugh escaping despite myself. "He spent my whole childhood telling me the military was for kids who didn't have a plan." "And what are you going to say to him when he finds out?" Caleb asked. "Nothing," I said. "He made his choice. I'm making mine." 2 days later, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Hello?" "Good afternoon, Ms. Hayes. This is Staff Sergeant Williams with the United States Army. I received your preliminary inquiry about our nursing scholarship programs. Do you have a few minutes to talk about what that actually entails?" I looked around Caleb's kitchen, the chipped mug drying by the sink, my color-coded planner sitting uselessly on the counter, the stack of loan papers still tucked into my backpack like a ghost of the life I'd planned. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Yeah, I do." What I didn't know as I leaned back in the chair and listened to the sergeant outline physical standards, medical screenings, security clearances, and service obligations was that this phone call was the point of no return. The day my parents chose my sister's third wedding over my future, they thought I'd be stuck. Instead, they shoved me straight into a path where I'd learn exactly how strong I was without them. Staff Sergeant Williams didn't have the polished recruiter video charm I expected. No blinding smile, no dramatic voice. He spoke plainly, like someone who didn't have time to convince you of something you didn't already want. If you're serious about applying, he said, we move quickly. You'll need to pass the medical exam, a background check, and physical fitness standards. You'll attend basic training, then officer candidate school. After that, you'll enter the Army nursing program. Scholarship covers full tuition and gives you a stipend. But it's a commitment. 4 years active duty after you graduate. 4 years. I rolled that number around in my mind like a dice with jagged edges. Okay, I said, what do I do first? Show up, he replied. And I did. Within 2 weeks, I'd completed paperwork, attended meetings, peed in a cup for drug testing, gotten my medical screening, listed every surgery I'd ever had, one appendix, and been measured, weighed, poked, prodded, and evaluated. Caleb watched all of this with a mix of pride and anxiety that he was terrible at hiding. I'm not worried, he said one night, lying on the couch while I filled out yet another form. You're lying, I replied. He didn't deny it. It's not you I'm worried about, he said. It's the world you're stepping into. That world is what gets me the degree I've worked 4 years for. Yeah, he said, staring at the ceiling. I know. Something tightened in his jaw, something that told me he was thinking about Jenna. We didn't say her name often, but she hovered in the corners of our relationship like background noise we couldn't fully turn off. We'd started dating a year after their breakup. She'd been his college girlfriend, the type who looked perfect on paper, but eroded you from the inside out. She'd once told me, back when she thought Caleb and I were just friends, some women are built for bigger lives, Maya. Some of us shine. Others just work hard. When Caleb and I became a couple, she'd called him crying, saying I wasn't the kind of woman who can keep up with a man like him. He blocked her. But she wasn't done with her commentary. She found ways to sprinkle her opinions into mutual friends' conversations. She's jealous. She's small-minded. She doesn't deserve someone like Caleb. Same script Ashley used. Same script Mom used. Funny how quickly people confuse confidence with entitlement. 3 weeks after my initial meeting, Sergeant Williams called again. You passed everything, he said. You're accepted into the nursing scholarship pipeline, pending completion of basic training. Basic starts in 3 months. Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Basic training. The part people warn you about. The part movies dramatize. The part everyone jokes will break you. I didn't tell my parents. I'd already changed my phone number, left Caleb's apartment, and effectively ghosted my entire family. They hadn't known where I was for 4 months. I planned to keep it that way. My relationship with Caleb, though, became its own battlefield. Not in a dramatic, screaming way. In the quiet ways, the pauses between sentences, the way his fingers lingered on my wrist as if memorizing me. One night, lying on his bed with the window cracked open, he finally said what had been eating him alive. I'm scared, he whispered. I know. You'll be gone for 9 weeks, then OCS, then nursing program, then deployments. I don't know where any of that leaves us. I stared at the ceiling fan, tracing its slow rotation. Do you want to break up? I asked. His head snapped toward me. No. God, no. But I don't want to be the reason you hesitate. You're not, I said. You're the reason I'm standing at all. Silence. Then, quietly. Jenna messaged me, he admitted. My chest tightened. What did she say? That you're dragging me down, he said. That you're only joining the military to prove something to your parents. That once you're in that world, you'll realize you're not cut out for it. Same crap as always. And you? I told her to go to hell, he said simply. Something in me unclenched. He reached over and traced his thumb across the back of my hand. You're choosing yourself, he said. It just scares me how much it's going to cost. 3 months later, I boarded a bus bound for basic training. Uniform. Issued. Hair pulled back so tightly it felt like my scalp was being tax audited. Heart. Trying its best to beat normally. Fort Jackson looked exactly like the photos online. Ugly buildings, angry humidity, an atmosphere of collective regret. The bus hissed to a stop. Drill Sergeant Keller boarded. He looked like he ate recruits for breakfast and used their tears as hydration. Get your bodies off my bus, he roared. Chaos followed. 40 recruits stumbled out, clutching duffels, tripping, bumping, trying not to get singled out. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't freeze. Years of emotional ambushes prepared me for this. Every scream from a drill sergeant felt familiar, just louder and more legally sanctioned. The first morning started at 4:30 a.m., with Keller storming into the barracks like Satan on a caffeine rush. "Formation in 90 seconds. Move!" I moved. Push-ups until your arms tremble. 5-mile runs before sunrise. Obstacle courses engineered by sadists. Inspections so detailed you'd swear dust was created solely to humiliate you. Drill Sergeant Martinez was the nightmare version of every high school teacher who ever hated me. 5'3", built like fury, voice like a megaphone dipped in acid. The woman lived to break spirits. The slightest wobble, the smallest hesitation, she pounced. But she did something my parents had never done. She challenged me, because she expected me to be strong, not because she assumed I was weak. By week 3, recruits started dropping out. One guy from Wisconsin, Patterson, cried during PT. Martinez dismantled him psychologically within minutes. He quit by lunchtime. They used him as an example. "This is what happens when you fold. Anyone else want to go home to mommy?" Not me. Every time I wanted to stop during a run, I pictured my dad saying, "You're young. You can always go back to school." Every time my muscles shook, I remembered Mom telling me to be understanding. Every time Martinez got in my face, screaming that I wasn't special, I remembered Ashley sitting on her bed, scrolling online shopping sites while I scrubbed hospital floors. Pain, sweat, rage, they all blended into something clean and sharp: determination. In the gas chamber, surrounded by choking recruits clawing at their masks, I forced myself to breathe through burning lungs and recite my name and social security number while my eyes poured tears. When I stumbled out coughing, Martinez watched me with an expression that, on anyone else, might have been pride. "That's how you survive," she said. "Not fast, not fancy, just stubborn." It was the first time in my life that stubbornness was treated as strength. By week 6, the drill sergeant stopped trying to break me. By week 8, they used me as an example. "This is Hayes," Keller barked one morning. "She isn't the strongest, she isn't the fastest, but she doesn't quit. Mental toughness beats muscles every damn time." Graduation from basic training felt unreal. The shaved-headed recruit with fear in her bones was gone. The woman in uniform was someone else, someone even I was still getting to know. Next stop, officer candidate school, where they break you in different ways. But that's where the real story continues. Officer candidate school wasn't designed to break your body. It was designed to break your mind. Basic training had been loud. Constant yelling, constant motion, constant physical punishment. OCS was quiet in the worst possible way. You weren't ordered to run. You were ordered to think, and then punished for thinking wrong. Our first morning, Captain Williams, the OCS commander, stood in front of 40 of us and said, "Congratulations on surviving basic training. That does not make you leaders. That makes you minimally useful." A few people laughed. He didn't. Over the next several weeks, they dropped us into nightmare scenarios with no perfect answers. "Your platoon is taking fire from 2 directions. You're low on ammunition. 3 soldiers are critically wounded. Your radio is dead. You have 30 seconds. What do you do?" No lifelines, no hints, just pressure. Some candidates froze. Freezing was death, according to the cadre. Freezing was failure. Freezing was the cardinal sin of leadership. I didn't freeze. Years of emotional damage made me disturbingly good at making decisions no one liked. Sell your feelings for the moment. Choose the least bad option. Move. The cadre noticed. One scenario changed the course of my training. A field exercise, simulated IED, simulated sniper fire, simulated civilian panic, simulated casualties. Real stress. My squad scattered at the initial explosion. 2 wounded soldiers screamed for help. Civilians flooded us, screaming in a language none of us recognized. It was chaos, but it wasn't new. Chaos was a kitchen where my parents talked over me. Chaos was my mom telling me to be more understanding. Chaos was Ashley sobbing over her own mistakes, while the world rearranged itself to comfort her. This chaos was simpler. I set up a defensive perimeter, dragged casualties into cover, got my squad low, assessed, held position. When the cadre halted the exercise, Captain Williams stared straight at me. "Hayes," he said, "explain your call." Pushing forward meant exposing the squad to sniper fire without knowing their location, I said. Holding allowed casualty security and situational assessment. What if you didn't accomplish the mission? "You can retry a failed mission, sir," I said. "You can't resurrect dead soldiers." Silence. Then, "That is the correct answer, Lieutenant." He turned to the group. Leadership isn't bravado, it's judgment. For the first time, I tasted what it felt like to be respected for my mind. Not my compliance, not my silence, not my ability to be flexible for everyone else's emergencies. That feeling kept me alive through the next 3 months of evaluations, tests, and leadership rotations. When I finally earned my commission, the gold bars on my uniform felt like a spine I had grown 1 ounce at a time. The Army nursing program, part medical school, part military academy, part emotional crucible. Our instructor, Major Patricia Reeves, was the kind of woman who could stitch a gunshot wound with one hand and crush a man's ego with the other. Listen up, she told us during trauma training. Civilian nurses have time and support. Military nurses have chaos and limited supplies. Some of you will have to choose who lives and who dies. You need to get comfortable with that. Nobody breathed. This, she said, tapping her chest, is the job you signed up for. If you can't stomach the weight, walk out now. Nobody left, but the weight stayed. Between classes in anatomy, emergency medicine, pharmacology, and battlefield trauma, we rotated through military hospitals, treating training injuries, stabilizing combat casualties flown home, holding the hands of soldiers barely old enough to drink. I'd gone to nursing school wanting to help people, but the Army taught me what helping people really meant. Meanwhile, back home, my family's world was cracking. 6 months after I left, Ashley's third wedding finally happened. I wasn't invited. It didn't matter. I was treating simulated amputations in Texas. But through the family grapevine, mainly Grandma calling Derek's mother, who called Caleb, the story reached me. The wedding had been a spectacle. Ice sculptures, string quartet, signature cocktails named after Ashley and Trevor, designer everything. $60,000 poured into a single night. The marriage lasted 7 months. Trevor's gambling problem caught up with him. So did his girlfriend, in another state. Ashley learned both truths the same week. A bookie came to their apartment demanding money. Marriage number 3 died harder than the others. Grandma was the only one who didn't hide the truth from me. She called Caleb one evening, voice warm and heavy with heartbreak. "They know they messed up, sweetheart," she said. "Your father asks about you constantly. Your mother cries every Sunday. They drive by Derek's old place hoping to see your car." "Good," I said. It came out cold, but it was honest. "You made the right choice, Maya," Grandma whispered. "One day they'll understand why." I didn't know then how desperately I'd need her voice in the months that followed. Because 2 years into my military training, the call came. Grandma was gone. Heart attack. Sudden, unforgiving. The funeral was scheduled for the following week. It would be the first time I went home since leaving. The first time my parents would see me in uniform. The first time I'd stand in the same room as Ashley, since she told me I was jealous of her happiness. The first time I'd face the people who taught me I was forgettable, wearing the rank that proved I wasn't. I booked leave, booked a flight, pressed my uniform until it looked like a weapon. I didn't rehearse what I would say. I didn't need to. Some stories are better told in silence. The funeral home smelled like lilies and old wood polish, the same combination I remembered from every childhood wake, except this time the air felt tighter, thinner, like it was trying to squeeze the grief out of me before I crossed the threshold. I walked in wearing my dress uniform, pressed jacket, polished shoes, hair perfectly tucked into a regulation bun. Not because I wanted to show off, because it was the only formal outfit I owned that didn't feel borrowed or cheap. Mom stood by Grandma's casket, hands clasped, vibrating with silent grief. She turned at the sound of my footsteps and froze. It wasn't the stunned, delighted freeze you see in movies. It was the kind where a person sees something they'd given up hoping for, and the shock rearranges their entire face. "Maya," her voice cracked apart. Before I could brace myself, she rushed forward and wrapped her arms around me so tightly I could barely breathe. For a moment, I stood stiff as stone, uncertain whether to hug back or let her arms slip off like water. But I held her, because despite everything she'd done, this was my mother, breaking in real time. "You look," she whispered, pulling back just enough to see me clearly. Grown and strong, and so much like someone I barely recognize. "That's generally what happens when you join the military," I said, more sharply than I intended. Her eyes filled again. Before she could respond, Dad appeared from the hallway behind her. He stopped dead. The man who once said the military was for people with no plan stared at me like I'd stepped out of a TV screen. "Maya!" I straightened. "Dad." He walked toward me slowly, as though afraid I'd disappear if he moved too fast. You look, his voice failed, then steadied. You look incredible, healthy, capable. I barely recognize the little girl He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Yeah, I said, I've changed. Silence stretched. People glanced at us. Distant cousins, old neighbors, church friends, but nobody interrupted. Mom wiped her eyes. We didn't know how to reach you, she said, voice trembling. We tried calling Caleb's mother, but she said you moved. We asked everyone. It was like you vanished. I did vanish, I replied. That was the point. Dad flinched like I'd physically hit him. Maya, he said softly, I know you were angry when you left. Angry, I repeated, the words scraping my throat. Dad, that doesn't begin to cover it. Before either of them could respond, the funeral director appeared, asking everyone to take their seats. Dad cleared his throat. After the service, he said quietly, please, just the three of us. Your grandmother, she would have wanted us to try. He was right. Grandma would have wanted it. So I nodded. The service was simple, gentle, exactly the way she'd have wanted it. People shared stories about her kindness, her stubbornness, the way she kept peppermint candies in her purse for any child who crossed her path. Ashley walked in late, eyes red from crying. When she saw me, she stopped mid-step. Her eyes flicked over my uniform, over the insignia, over the ribbons, over the version of me she'd never believed would exist without her commentary. Maya, she whispered, almost afraid. Hey, Ash. I didn't know you'd be here. Grandma deserved a goodbye. She swallowed. You joined the army? For real? Yeah. For nursing school? The scholarship? Yup. We both knew what that meant. The scholarship I wouldn't have needed if our parents had kept their promise. Ashley looked down, shame pooling in her expression. But grief swallowed the moment, and the service began. After the burial, the funeral home gave us a small room for privacy. Mom, Dad, Ashley, me. The air inside felt heavier than the casket outside. Dad spoke first. I need to say something I should have said years ago, he said. Not just when you left. Years before that. He took a breath. I was wrong. Maya. I was so painfully, stupidly wrong. Choosing Ashley's wedding over your education was the worst decision I've ever made. Mom nodded, her hands trembling. We think about it every day, wondering where you were, if you were safe, if we'd ever get a chance to fix things. You chose a party over my future, I said. No anger, just fact. A wedding, Mom corrected softly. A wedding for a marriage that lasted 7 months, I said evenly. Ashley flinched. I know, she whispered. I know, Maya. I've been awful. I was selfish. And I didn't understand how much I was hurting you. I turned to her. You hurt me for years, I said. All of you did. The loan was the breaking point, not the beginning. Dad blinked, confused. What do you mean? We didn't... You charged me rent, I said. $800 a month, while paying for Ashley's weddings, shopping sprees, and living expenses. Mom's face went ghost white. Maya, we thought you wanted to contribute. I wanted a future, I said. You wanted to make Ashley comfortable. Silence swept the room. Ashley's chin quivered. Maya, what can we do to make this right? I shook my head. You can't make it right. You can't undo the years. But you can rebuild something new, slowly, on my terms. No guilt trips, no favoritism, no, we're all family, so just move on. Dad swallowed hard. Whatever you need, he said. Whatever it takes. We want you in our lives, not because we deserve it, because we're willing to earn it. Then I turned to Ashley. And you, I said, are going to figure your life out on your own. No more rescues, no more bailouts, no more weddings someone else pays for. You're capable. You always have been. You just never had to prove it. Ashley cried harder but nodded. I will, I promise. We talked for an hour. We didn't fix everything. But we opened a door that had been locked for years. And when I hugged Mom goodbye, she clung to me like someone who finally understood the cost of losing what she took for granted. I love you, she whispered, and I'm so sorry for making you doubt it. I know, I said. I love you too. The next few years weren't magical. They were intentional. My parents visited twice a year while I served. Dinner tables stayed respectful, not demanding. Conversations avoided old wounds but didn't pretend they never existed. Ashley got a real job, moved out, learned responsibility the hard way. Caleb and I navigated long-distance military schedules, deployments that never happened but could have at any time. He waited for me. I chose him every day. Our relationship wasn't dramatic. It was steady, earned, adult. Exactly the opposite of Ashley's pattern. Maybe that's why it worked. Tomorrow I'd finish my service commitment. Tomorrow, I'd choose the next version of my life. But tonight, sitting in my apartment with the uniform draped over my chair, all I could think about was the strange feeling of coming home to a family slowly learning how to love without conditions. A family I never thought I'd return to. A family that, piece by piece, was learning who I really was. 4 years. That's how long the Army owned my calendar, my time, my muscles, my mind. 4 years of 4:30 a.m. wake-ups, 4 years of trauma bays and emergency drills, 4 years of becoming someone who no longer apologized for taking up space. And then, just like that, my service commitment ended. The hospital where I had once scrubbed floors as a CNA hired me immediately as an emergency department nurse. The difference between walking those halls at 19 versus 27 was staggering. Back then, I'd been invisible. Now, people stepped aside when I passed, respecting the uniform even after I'd switched to scrubs. I found an apartment downtown with big windows and a kitchen I actually used. Slowly, painfully slowly, I furnished it with things that were mine, not leftovers from someone else's house. My parents visited, carefully. My mom would bring a pie. She pretended wasn't store-bought. My dad would look around the apartment with quiet pride that he never fully put into words. We talked about normal things, work, weather, recipes, not the past, not yet. But sometimes, during long silences, I'd catch them looking at me the way people look at stained glass. Something fragile they'd broken and couldn't believe was somehow still standing. Ashley changed the most. Her life finally forced her to grow up. She found a job she liked, office management, surprisingly. She moved into a small apartment, cut up her credit cards, started paying her own bills. She even dated differently, slowly, cautiously, asking me for advice sometimes. Maya, how do you know when someone actually likes you versus when they like what you can give them? That's simple, I told her once. You stop giving first, then you watch. She blinked, absorbing that. Then she nodded. I was seeing for the first time a version of my sister who might have existed years earlier if she hadn't been babied into helplessness. Caleb and I found our rhythm too. Working girlfriend, civilian boyfriend, less adrenaline, more real life. He'd come over after his shifts, drop his keys on my counter, kiss me, and tell me about a coworker who microwaved fish again. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, my legs draped across his lap while he scrolled through his phone and I charted on patient records. It wasn't cinematic or dramatic. It was peaceful, which felt more miraculous than any romance plot I'd ever imagined. One evening, he reached over, closed my laptop, and said, "You're allowed to rest, you know." "I will," I said. "When?" "Eventually." He smiled at me, the kind of smile that said he wasn't going anywhere. 6 months after settling into my new role, Dad called. Not texted, called. "Dinner?" he asked. "Just us?" A part of me hesitated, old instincts, old hurt. But something in his voice pushed me to say yes. We met at a quiet Italian restaurant not far from my apartment. I wore a simple black dress. He wore the same button-down he called his good shirt. We talked about work, about the rising price of gas, about Grandma's old garden that had finally died after years of no one tending it. Then dessert came. He set down his fork, looked directly at me, and exhaled like he'd been preparing for this moment for months. "Maya, I need you to know something." I raised an eyebrow. "Okay." He swallowed hard. "The worst mistake of my life was telling you your education could wait. I think about that conversation constantly. If I could take it back." "You can't," I said gently. "Neither of us can." "I know." His voice cracked. "But I need you to know that I see you now. I see what you've accomplished. And I know it happened despite me, not because of me." I stared at him for a long moment. My father, the man who'd once dismissed my entire future for Ashley's third wedding deposit, was finally, after years, stripping the excuses from the truth. "I'm not better than you," I said quietly. "I just grew in a direction you didn't expect, and you're here now. That counts." "Does it?" he asked, voice full of fear he didn't bother to hide. "Does it really?" I took a breath. "I don't know yet," I said, "but I'm willing to keep trying to build something new. That's the best I've got." His eyes shined. "That's more than I deserve," he whispered. And he meant it. 2 months later, Ashley called in a panic. "Maya, can you talk? What's wrong?" "I got a job offer in another state. A good one. Like, life-changing good. But I don't have the money to move. I was hoping you could loan me—" "No." Silence. "Maya, I really need—" "You need to figure this out yourself," I said gently. "That's not cruelty. That's me believing you're capable." "But I can't afford—" Then you can't take the job, or you find another way. Talk to mom and dad if you need help, but I'm not your safety net anymore. Quiet. Then, in a small voice, you're right. Her honesty startled me. I'm sorry for asking, she said. Don't be sorry, I replied. Just be independent. You're capable of more than you've ever been allowed to prove. Show it. 2 months later, she moved, with her own savings and a small loan from our parents, which she paid back on time. She called me from her new apartment crying, but smiling. I did it, she said. No husband, no bailout, just me. I'm proud of you, I told her. That means more than you know. Life moved forward. I became a charge nurse, then a nurse manager. Caleb and I built a quiet, steady life together. My parents aged into their regrets with grace instead of denial. Holidays became something I could attend without choking. Boundaries became the foundation of our rebuilt relationship. One Thanksgiving, I watched Ashley help Mom set the table, laughing, chatting, moving with a confidence that wasn't performative anymore. Dad carved the turkey while humming some old tune from my childhood. Caleb squeezed my hand under the table, and for once, I didn't feel like the forgotten daughter. I felt like a woman who had rebuilt her own life and allowed others to rebuild their place in it. Sometimes you don't get the family you deserve. You get the family you're willing to fight for, or walk away from, or return to with boundaries sharp enough to draw blood if needed. I didn't get a perfect family. I got a real one. And that was enough. Mom likes to say we hit reset, but I've never liked that word. Reset implies you go back to the beginning. Same buttons, same settings, same outcomes. We didn't reset. We rebuilt. Piece by piece, step by step, year by year. And the strange thing about rebuilding is that the new structure never looks like the old one. It's stronger where it used to be weak. It's cautious where it used to be careless. It's quieter, steadier, more intentional. My parents never quite stopped apologizing, even when they weren't using those exact words. Dad would bring over a toolbox and fix something small in my apartment that I didn't ask him to fix. Mom would send homemade soup with Caleb whenever he visited, claiming she accidentally made too much. Ashley would call me from her new city just to say she'd handled another tough day without falling apart. These were apologies in motion, hands moving where words had once done damage. The biggest change came on an evening that started like any other. Caleb and I were hosting my parents for dinner. I'd cooked, nothing fancy, just roasted chicken, vegetables, garlic bread. The conversation was easy, the way it sometimes is when everyone agrees not to poke the sleeping ghost sitting in the corner. After dessert, Dad asked Caleb to help him carry something from the car. They returned with a small wooden chest, old but polished. Dad set it on my table like it was something fragile. This was your grandmother's, he said. She kept things for each of us. We thought you should have her box now. I traced the carved edges with my fingertips. Inside were her letters, ones she'd written but never mailed because she didn't know where I was. Little notes about her garden, scraps of recipes she'd clipped out for me, photos of me from childhood tucked behind a faded bookmark. Mom wiped her eyes. She never stopped believing in you, she whispered. I know, I whispered back. Dad cleared his throat. There's something else, he said. A letter she wrote for when you came back. He handed me a sealed envelope. My name was on it in her careful, looping script. I opened it slowly. Maya, people will tell you forgiveness is something you owe others. It isn't. Forgiveness is something you choose because you deserve peace. Not them, you. When you're ready, come home. Not for us, for yourself. Love, Grandma. My chest tightened painfully. Silence filled the room until Dad said, She was right. You don't owe us forgiveness, but we're grateful for every inch you've given. I nodded, unable to speak. About a year later, Ashley called again, this time not crying, not panicking, but buzzing with excitement. I got promoted, she said. Maya, they chose me. Me. That's amazing, I said, and I meant it. What do I do? She asked, breathless. You celebrate. You earned it. She laughed, a genuine sound that didn't carry desperation or insecurity behind it. I wish Grandma could see this. She can, I said softly. You carry her everywhere. As for Caleb, well, he surprised me too. We were sitting on his balcony one evening, sharing takeout noodles and trading stories about the worst customers we'd ever dealt with. The city hummed below us, the air was warm, my heart was steady. Caleb set his chopsticks down. You know, he said, watching you, everything you've built, everything you survived. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed. I snorted. That's dramatic. I'm serious, he said, eyes soft but steady. Loving you has been the easiest choice I've ever made." I blinked at him. "Where is this coming from?" He reached into his pocket. My breath caught. He didn't kneel. He didn't make a speech. He didn't create a moment meant for social media. He simply opened the small velvet box between us and said, "I don't want a different life. I want this one, with you, if you want it too." The ring wasn't flashy. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't Ashley's style. It was mine. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I didn't launch into a dramatic monologue. I just nodded. "Yes," I said. He let out a breath like he'd been holding it for years. We didn't rush wedding plans. We didn't let anyone else's expectations shape ours. We didn't repeat the mistakes my parents made with Ashley. We built everything slowly, intentionally, together. Years later, after promotions, after healing, after therapy, after learning how to say no without guilt, I stood in my parents' backyard. It was Thanksgiving again. The table was set with mismatched chairs. Ashley brought a casserole she actually cooked herself. Mom fussed with the napkins. Dad tended to the grill like he was supervising a high-stakes military operation. They were older now, quieter, more aware of their faults, more grateful for every moment I allowed them. Caleb squeezed my hand. "You okay?" he whispered. "Yeah," I said, and I meant it. Because here's the truth. I didn't come home because they deserve forgiveness. I came home because I deserve peace. Because I was no longer the girl begging to be chosen. I was the woman who had learned, through war, through heartbreak, through resilience, that family isn't who breaks you. Family is who rebuilds with you when you finally stop breaking yourself for them. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the forgotten daughter. I was the one who walked away. I was the one who rose. I was the one who came back on my own terms. I was the one who chose myself.